So for this part, we will transfer data to another database and objects to that database. So this is our original database. Obviously, I mentioned that I needed more attributes for the client so I could have better queries later on for marketing reasons in terms of analyzing what product sells where, sell where the best, and so on. So that would be a nice one to have. Also, if I want to do an inventory control, maybe under product, I'm going to have quantity on hand as another attribute that will be updated every time we commit a line item as a transaction. Okay, so this is the structure of our initial database design. Let's look at the files that we've created so far. So let me just minimize this for a second here. And we're in transaction 3. This here just means the file is open. So I'm going to create another database and call it transaction version 4. I'm going to create in it my own version of the clients table that includes all the fields that I need. However, I'm just going to need the data that's in transaction v3, not the object client. Okay? All right, so to do that, the first thing you might want to consider is move the data that's in transaction v3 into a temporary storage area. That could be a text file, or it could be simply a spreadsheet. Ideally, a Microsoft Access or Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. So let's get to that. Let's move the data first. So I'm going to go ahead, close this relationships, close all, highlight client right here, and go to external data. And where it says, you see an arrow here, this way, export to Excel spreadsheet, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to export. Now, notice here it goes to my document. That's not what I want. And I'm going to store it right here where I have coding, testing, and this should be database. This is transactional, and it will be right here. And I'm going to call it client XLS. So we know it's a spreadsheet. It will save it with an extension as an Excel workbook anyway. I'm going to say save. Okay, that's where it's going to be. I am simply exporting data. Formatting, layout, and so on, I'm not that concerned. I'm just going to say OK. There you go. And then I'm going to close. Okay. Now, let's close this application right here. Notice now I have a client XLS. So if I double click here, it's going to give me an error, but that's okay. I still have a spreadsheet. So all of my clients are right here, right, in a spreadsheet. Okay, perfect. So I am going to close it. Don't need this error message. It's not going to affect anything. I'm going to open a new database and import just the data into an existing table. All right, so I'm going to create a table and import data to it. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to create a blank database. I'm going to call it transactions version 4. Okay, and I'm going to tell it where to save it. It will be in the same directory again. And I'm going to go over here, databases. I see I saved it as a lowercase, so let me just do that. Transaction, just to be consistent. Transaction, and remove that plural there. There you go, transaction version 4. And I'm going to hit OK and create. Now, this is a blank database. So by default, it creates a table for you. Go to design mode for that table and call it client. This will be my official client table and for this new design. So I'm going to hit OK. Now I want, this is important now, if you want to import anything from that spreadsheet, the field names kind of have to match. So this will have to be client ID. This would be first name. Last name. First, let me go back to the spreadsheet just to double check. And I see I capitalized first name and last name. Client ID is all lowercase. Okay, it's just going to minimize the errors you might get. I mean, it's doable to transfer even if the names are not the same, but I prefer that they are the same, so I'm not going to be prompted with adjustments to make. So I'm going to say first, last name. Now I know they're short text, 255 characters. Last name here. So this is as far as resemblance is concerned right here. Next will be additional fields that I am going to design in my new database. Address. I'll just capitalize address here. City. So these fields did not exist in the previous database, or in the more specifically in the previous client table in the transaction version 4. State, zip, and a phone number, and an email. Okay, so here we go. I have all sorts of, so let me save that. And let's make phone properties to look like a phone. So I can go over here where it says input mask. As you can see, you have a phone number input mask. I can hit finish. Perfect. Save it. So that way, when you enter a phone, the parentheses and the dash will be put in there. I'm not sure if they have an input mask for emails. It's not that important. Let me just check. I don't see anything like that. Definitely zip codes if you want to do the extended zip codes if you wanted to. Passwords will make it so when you enter, quickly the character will be a star, which is nice, in case you want to create a password field. So you've got short dates, long dates, all sorts of things. So I'm going to cancel here. We're good. Now, if I run this, obviously there's no data here. Okay, so I'm going to close this. Make sure if you have several tables, you're highlighting the table that you need the data imported to come to. So I'm going to go to external data this time, and I'm going to see where it says Excel going in. That's the one. And I'm going to tell it where the file is. And what I have is saved it under code testing, under databases, under transactional. Here he is. This is why I like to name my files in a way that I can quickly see them in case I have tons of them. I'm going to say open. Okay. It's going to say import source data into a new table. So source data into a new table in the current database. Yes, that's exactly what I want. Or I could append. Okay. So I could append to client right here. Okay. So let's do that. Let's append to the existing client right now. Okay. And I'm going to hit OK. It's going to analyze the fields that I have. It sees client ID, first name, last name, sees this data. I'm going to hit next. And let's see. First row contains column heading. Let's see. It's not showing that. Let me go back 1 second. It is client. Let's try this for a second. Next. Under client, finish. Let's see if everything goes. And let's close. Let's open client. Hallelujah. It worked. So all data got transferred to the database. So just use the default settings, except what I did is I appended the data to client. Obviously, I had no data in client, so it appended to nothing. So if you already had data already in this client, that would have been perfect. So you're not writing over it. You're just appending new data. Okay? So perfect. So we have a client ID that is a primary key. So let me go back to my design. So if I go over here to design view, That is a primary key, so nothing has changed structurally. Okay, that looks good. Excellent. Now, what about importing other items? And this time I want objects, not necessarily raw data. Okay, so we can go to external data, and we're going to go to access right here. And we're going to tell it, in this, we want transaction version 3. That's the one we want. Import table, queries, forms, report, macros, and modules into the current database. There is another button here for link, which means any changes you do here affects the other database. That's not what we want. We want these two databases to be distinct. I just need the tables that are already there. So I'm going to say, okay. It's going to ask me, what do you want? So notice here, this is nice. I already have clients, so I don't need that. Line item, manufacturer, product, and transaction. Definitely I want these tables. So let me hit the shift key and select these. Okay, so that's great. So I'm going to say okay and close. Here they are. Now let's see if it actually imported the relationship. Otherwise, I'll have to do it. So I'm going to go to the relationship here. Yep, everything is there. So it related everything for me. So let me just move the products and manufacturers. For the imported items, the only thing it didn't do is obviously to the existing table that I have, which is client. So you're going to have to do that. So in my case, I'm going to go ahead and do show table. Pull client out of here. There you go. Now establish and enforce the referential integrity between these two entities. So client to client ID, enforce referential integrity, create, we're good to go. Perfect. So now so we're going to go ahead and import the forms we had. So unless you want to design those forms again from scratch, which is fine as well. Okay. But at least from a relational view, everything works. So let's test it out. Let me open client. And notice I have pluses here. So if I go to any of these, and I believe I had, Robert Mitchum had some transactions. Here you go. I could see the transactions. I can see the line item. So everything works as if, so this is great in case you want to update, upgrade without copying, and selectively choose what you want to import and go from there. And or improve an existing table, or import just raw data to it, and so on. So hopefully this was helpful. Let's go ahead and try to see if we can import the forms. If they work, great. If they don't, we can take them out and put new forms. It's not that expensive to produce. So let me just close this. Let's close this for a second. And yes, I want to save the relationships. Let's go to external data again. Go to access. Same database, which is transactional version 3. Open. And I'm going to say, yes, I want objects. So I want forms. Notice I don't have a lot of queries or anything like that. I don't have any additional items in there. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say forms. I'm going to import all the forms. So I'm going to go from here, 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 here. I want everybody. Select all, basically. Okay? And I'm going to say OK. Okay? And I'm going to hit close. Here they are. Now let's see if the switchboard will work. So I'm going to go to the switchboard. There you go. Open clients. Perfect. And notice it opens it where I can go to a new client right away. If I want to see my first client, everything looks good. My last client, everything is fine. I want to see products. Perfect. Same thing. One thing I said about this, maybe I need to modify it where I go to the last record in here. We'll do that in a minute. But for now, as you can see, I can go from here to here, navigate all my manufacturers and the products that I have. I will add a new feature for this table in the next video, which is adding a line item. A quantity on hand. Let's try it now anyway. So let's see if we can actually see if it will reflect on the subform. If not, we're going to have to redesign the form so we can see that. So I'm going to go to the products and go to design view and add quantity on hand. And what I'm going to do is make that a number. Okay? And save this. Okay? This was never included in our forms, so I'm not sure if I go to the switchboard and open the client transactions. It does. No, that's just the quantity, the products. And as you can see, it doesn't show the field for quantity on hand. So what I'm going to do is go to the subform and add that field if you want to see it right here. So if you don't want to do a major modifications to these forms, go to the subform design, which is this one. Okay, we're going to open it by itself. So let's close everybody else. And let's go to the product subform right here and add a field right here for quantity on hand. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, this is still a form, and let's see if we can go to form design. As you can see here, so what I'm going to do is add right here. So under design, we're going to add a field. So I'm going to pull a textbook here, a text box right here, and bounded. So right now it's unbound, and make this quantity on hand. Okay, so we could do maybe, so quantity on hand. So here you could write quantity on hand. Okay, so that's the quantity on hand. And then make this right here, get its data from the quantity on hand right here. Notice under data, quantity on hand. Let's quickly test it out. And you can see, obviously I haven't set any values for it, but it's showing. That's perfect. So let's save that, close this subform, open the switchboard again and see if we can get it. And go to products, and you can see quantity on hand now is showing. But what I'm going to do is extend this a little more so the quantity on hand would show. So one way to do this is to increase the size of the form a little bit, and it will be this one right here. And if I can get to highlight this, it's a little tricky getting the mouse, there you go, right here. So I'm just going to move it a little more, maybe to the end here. See if that's enough. Just go over here. Perfect. I can see it right there. So, because I didn't want to have a scroll bar at the bottom here to go horizontally. Okay. So as you can see, quantity on hand, perfect. I can update later on and put some data in there, since this was newly created in here. So I'm going to save all this, close it. Okay, again, products. When you open it, quantity on hand will be there. Okay, so that means anytime you get a product, you can update your quantity on hand by hand, manually. Okay, eventually what I'm going to do is I'm going to have queries that will update this for us anytime there is a transaction. That way I'll have a good inventory control system as well. Okay, so I hope you've learned a lot from this. And let's, the next improvement, we will start with queries.